It's about that time once again. The top 10 weakest series is back, and this time around, we're keeping it grounded. We've got the third typing of the Ground, Rock, Steel conglomerate, wrapping up probably the most famous trio of Pokemon typings aside from Fire, Water, Grass. Now, this list, the Pokemon on it are pretty clearly not good. It's a little easier than the Steel type list was, that's for sure. There's a few repeat offenders from last week's Steel type list, and some well-known ground types that maybe you weren't expecting. I suppose, if nothing else, you might see a dual type Pokemon that appears on this list that didn't appear on the list of its other typing. For instance, in the top 3, there is a Pokemon that is also a rock type, and wasn't on the rock list. Each list I do is approached on a typing by typing basis, so while it might appear to be inconsistent from time to time, I assure you that plenty of research and thought definitely has gone into them. So let's get into this ground list and see who's going to be upset with me by the end of it. Let's get things kicked off today with one of the original ground types, a Pokemon that was once so bad it couldn't even use Earthquake, Sandslash. Now, in the present day, there is some merit to using Sandslash in battle. Its attack stat is base 100, and its defense base 110. That's pretty decent for a physical Pokemon. Its abilities are both reliant on a Sandstorm being active, either upping its evasiveness or speed, and considering a base 65 speed is what Sandslash is dealing with, that boost would be nice. So, still even with some promising stats and a way to circumvent poor speeds, Sandslash is still here opening up the list. It's able to improve the speed a bit further by using Rapid Spin, which isn't just a viable way to improve speed, it also gets rid of hazards, and that's important. It can set up its own hazards and get rid of them. There is also a spot on most teams in Pokemon for a monster that can do that. However, when we look beyond the obvious usages of Sandslash, there isn't much to talk about. It can use Earthquake to some success, of course due to it being Stab, and its attack stat being pretty good. But what about on the special side? Sandslash really can't do all that much to survive special hits. And with the many powerful water and ice type moves floating around in competitive battling, it's not going to have a good time. There's potential to be, sure, and the 8th generation of Pokemon probably offers the Cantonian Sandslash the best shot it's ever had at being successful. However, it's merely successful when heading into battle with other bad Pokemon. And that isn't the most glowing endorsement a Pokemon can get. We've got our first Pokemon that was featured on another list coming up here. The Galarian cousin of Cofagrigus, Runargus. I'd say Runargus was definitely one of the most jarring Pokemon to find in Galar since it just came so out of nowhere. But unfortunately, it isn't exactly a great ground Pokemon. Now, I'll give it this. Of its other typing, few ghosts have the insane defense that this thing has. Check it. Base 145 defense and 105 special defense. That's a great combo. The unfortunate thing is that the HP really doesn't stack up as well, sitting at base 58, which is rancidly bad. It's going to be able to take a hit, but a good chunk of its low health will disappear, leaving it very susceptible to moves that do number damage instead of percentage damage. Its attack stats and speed are also pretty poor, though I guess base 95 attack isn't too horrible. For abilities, unlike its brother, Cofagrigus with Mummy, it has the far more interesting Wandering Spirit, which essentially works like Mummy, except it flat out switches the abilities. So there is a real chance your Runargus could end up with the very beneficial ability. However, it's a lot of risk using this thing, even for such a reward, as its move pool might include Earthquake and Poltergeist, but there isn't much else that really jumps off the page in its pool. If it were a special attacker, there would be more than this thing could do. But unfortunately, that is not the case. Even still though, there is potential in using Runargus if you're willing to risk a lot with typing to obtain a very beneficial ability. But being a risky Pokemon doesn't always spell well for your place on this list, and that speed isn't doing it any favors either. It's a little bit better of a ground type as opposed to a ghost type, but it still isn't great. Quagsire is going to be popping up here in the 8th spot, and I can already feel this visceral reaction from some of you. Let's get this out of the way here. Quagsire almost entirely relies on Unaware to be any good. Its stat line is not that of a great Pokemon. Some horrible base 35 speed and 85 in both physical stats. It's already not outspeeding anything, but there are some real good grass-type moves on both the physical and special ends that can absolutely punish Quagsire. So those are a buttload of bad things, though that unaware ability can really make a difference in battle. You can punish certain Pokemon for setting up, like a D-Dancing Salamence or Swords Dance Scizor for example, as their setup will be entirely ignored by Quagsire and thus give it a chance to knock them out and spare your team an unfortunate death by sweeping. If Quagsire loses that ability though, which is definitely possible, it becomes entirely useless and fitting on being on this list. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of you that are going to voice an opinion of not agreeing with that, as there are only so many things that can get rid of a Pokemon's ability in battle. And I get that, though it doesn't sway my thought process, as having to rely on anything in battle that can possibly be taken away feels like the makings of a not so great Pokemon. Quagsire is an unfortunate victim of being good for only one thing that can be cancelled out. Alright, here at number 7, we're gonna talk about a duo of Pokemon, the Galarian and Univin Stunfisk. So both of these flatfish are really not all that great. I'm sure you guys probably remember the last video where we talked about Galarian Stunfisk. And actually, Stunfisk was good enough to avoid the electric type list, but it couldn't help itself this time around. These two are two sides of the same coin, one being a more physical Pokemon and the other being a special one, as you can see by the stats right here on screen. There is some form of either special or physical bulk depending, but aside from that, Stunfisk is hardly an attacker either way. There is no speed to be found either, but that's par for the course. Regardless of the form you choose to use, its usefulness stays the same. You should be setting up Stealth Rocks with this thing, and possibly other hazards, and that's it. There are attacks in the pools, ranging from Earthquake on the Galarian form to Discharge and Earth Power on the Univin one. Though really, the attacks don't matter too much. That isn't the point of Stunfisk. You should be setting up hazards on this thing, and that is really all. You won't appreciate an Earthquake regardless of the form you use, and with such bad speed, it's hard to accomplish too terribly much. Stunfisk definitely belongs here on this list today. Here again is a Alolan trio, this time just outside the top 5 instead of sitting in the top 3. I still maintain it isn't really a great Pokemon, but it's a bit better as a ground type than it is as a steel type, though not by much. This time, there are really just much worse ground types. Its defenses are very bad, which is the number one thing it has working against it. The good speed and usable attack is completely downplayed by such horrible defenses. There are plenty of Pokemon that can take hits from a Alolan trio, even with the base 100 attack. So those poor defenses surely leave it susceptible to getting bopped if it can't take a Pokemon out with one hit. Plus, seriously, who cares about having tangling hair when you're probably outspeeding everything anyway? Look, Alolan trio has Earthquake and Iron Head, which are probably its best moves, and it can even use Toxic alongside Substitute to attempt to stall an opponent. Though, it can't take hits, so what's the point in that? I couldn't tell you. And yet, you can ask the people who put sets on Smogon. This thing sucks. I don't even think it's good enough in a role where it just relies on its speed. It sucks. You suck, Trio, and I still don't understand how your organs work. Are you like a cow? Do you have multiple stomachs? You continue to confuse me. Starting off our top 5 today is Claydol, the Clay Doll Pokemon. Real original, Game Freak. It's a defensive Pokemon, more so on the special side, but it doesn't have great HP, and isn't the most exciting attacker ever. However, it does have access to Levitate, which is always a great ability to have. Don't want to be destroyed by Earthquake, right? Defensively, Claydol is really a solid Pokemon. However, that's it. It can't attack super well. All it can do is try and stall using moves like Toxic, Protect, Stealth Rocks, and Rapid Spin. As a matter of fact, that may as well be the set you use for a Claydol. Maybe switch in Teleport or something to that effect. There are good resistances and immunities, but just as many serious weaknesses. It's a great representation of being the midpoint on a list like this. A lack of recovery, a weakness to strong typings, and little offensive prowess unfortunately leaves Claydol here today, opening up our top 5. So next up here in the top 5, we have poor Marowak. Its Alolan form has totally overshadowed it at this point, and it just isn't at all a great Pokemon. So we'll talk about its stats first, and its defense is the only thing really worth highlighting. It's base 110, and it'll probably lull you into a false sense of security that this thing is some sort of defense savant. Well, I can assure you that is most certainly not the case. Now, its base 80 attack stat can be improved tremendously by holding the Thick Club, but that immediately locks away your item slot permanently if you want to get the most out of Marowak, which sucks. Its Lightning Rod ability is really only going to be good in doubles, because no electric types are going to try to attack it anyway. And Rockhead barely feels warranted because there aren't really any moves in its pool that do any recoil. You may as well run Battle Armor. At least that will keep Marowak from being dealt any critical hits. The moves in Marowak's pool range from offensive choices like Earthquake, Hazard Setup and Stealth Rocks, and then setup moves like Swords Dance, which can actually really make Marowak hit stupid hard. The part that of course works against Marowak is its horrible base 45 speed, which makes setting it up with something like Swords Dance a bit of a ridiculous thought. What does anyone expect to accomplish with Marowak when it's as slow as it is? There are other physically defensive and powerful Pokemon with better speed, whether they be ground type or otherwise. It's definitely better than the next 3 by a bit, but I couldn't really put this original Cantonian Marowak in a better position than this. We've gone a long way through this list without a Pokemon that missed the Sword and Shield cut, but here we are. I mentioned in the intro, we had a Pokemon that would probably be surprising to see in the top 3, as it's a rock type as well and didn't make it on the rock list. Really, it's surprising to see this on name recognition alone to see it here. And it is Golem. It's slow, it's specially awful, and its most redeemable feature is the sturdy ability. Golem should be a good Pokemon, with that 130 base defense and 120 attack, and yet it's down here on this list. A special attacking water or grass move will put it in the ground quickly, and in reality, it's going to be prevented from using its powerful attack stat. You might be stuck using Golem as only a Stealth Rock user, and that's it because of sturdy. There are strategies for Golem in the very bad tiers of Pokemon, things it can do with Earthquake and Explosion and whatnot. However, this is an incredibly flawed and at times useless Pokemon that you probably don't think belongs here due to its name alone. Sorry Golem, it is what it is. It's time for the penultimate Pokemon on this list. And it isn't the first time we're talking about this particular dual typing. There was one Pokemon that really surprised me a bit when I sat down and did the research, and this is definitely it. Wiscash isn't exactly a Pokemon that comes to mind when I think about the franchise, that's for sure. It's very forgettable, but one aspect about it that isn't forgettable is its access to Dragon Dance. When we look at the stats outside of HP, they're all very standard and not fantastic. A move like Dragon Dance can pay dividends for Wiscash, being that it'll promote its speed and attack stats. It is most certainly a necessary boost. But it would take multiple usages of the move to make Wiscash actually worth using in a battle. As it stands, Wiscash may as well have been the worst ground typing just on these stats alone. Its abilities aren't anything special, with Oblivious being the best, as it prevents Wiscash from being taunted, and thus it doesn't get held back from using that D-Dance. The reality is though, it's really not easy for Wiscash to set up and not get destroyed in the process, since defensively, it's got absolutely nothing going for it. And if Wiscash can actually set itself up, it has access to Earthquake and Liquidation, which are pretty good stab moves. Though never expect to do much with Wiscash that is any good in battle. It's unable to take hits, and it's basically got no coverage outside of its stab. It got lucked out by the number 1 spot having a ground type form, honestly. So, closing out this list, for a second straight video, we've got Wormadam. It's the worst steel type ever, and apparently also the worst ground type ever. This time, we're talking about the Sandy Cloak. It's not as decently defensively as the Trash Cloak, but thankfully, it isn't as bad as the Grass one. Its speed is still bad, and it isn't very good offensively, as we'll get into a moment with the moves. Oh hey, look at this. Wait a minute. How shocking. There's no moves in the pool! Wormadam may have access to Quiver Dance, but honestly its move pool doesn't go well with that. The Sandy Cloak gets access to Earthquake, and that's cool and all, but Quiver Dance doesn't help that much. Doesn't this Pokemon just seem so good? How could I ever put it at number 1? Oh wait, I see now. I can do so because it has no speed, and even with its defenses, it will be hammered by quite a few different typings hurt by Stealth Rocks, and it's easily outclassed by its evolutionary brother Mothim. There, I said it. This thing sucks. It's the perfect number 1 entry. Talk about useless. That'll do it for another top 10 weakest video. This one was, it definitely kept me grounded, that's for sure. Some of these Pokemon can be pretty decent, but at the end of the day, it's still a weakest list. Let me know what you guys thought about it, as I'm sure you've already been doing throughout the video, and I'll look over what you have to say. Tell me what typing we're doing next. There's only a few left to go before we're done, so I'll be looking out for it. Hey, welcome to my new outro. A big thank you to everyone for watching the video. I want to give a huge thanks to my phenomenal team, and for the amazing art done each week by Danny the Demon. I couldn't do all this without them. If y'all enjoyed the video and want to see more content like this, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Be sure to leave a comment too. It really helps us out. I have a brand new TikTok for Mystic Umbreon, and I've got a goal to get 10k followers over there. If we can hit that goal, I'm going to pick a random video suggested to me by you guys and do it. So go over there and leave a follow. Also over on MysticSage, we've still got 2 videos going up every weekend. We've got content from My Hero, to Demon Slayer, to Dragon Ball, so come and check it out. And also check out MysticSage on TikTok. Finally, I've got an Amazon store where I sell tons of cool stuff. I think I'm gonna wrap this up though. I'm Mystic Umbreon, and I'll see you next time with some more amazing Pokemon content.